Hello, world, and welcome to stackCast, your go-to source for all things related to cloud security and cybersecurity compliance. I'm your host, Martin Rieger, and I'm thrilled to embark on this journey with you as we navigate the ever-changing landscape of cloud technology and cybersecurity. In a world where our reliance on digital technology is an all-time high, the need for secure and compliant data practices through states and federal government has never been more crucial. We hope to make this podcast not only informative, but engaging and interactive. So we encourage you to share your thoughts, questions, and experiences. And who knows, you might be featured in one of our future episodes. Thank you for tuning into stackCast. We can't wait to embark on this enlightening journey with you. Let's discover, design, and deploy our digital future together.
Well, hello there, and welcome back to stackCast. I'm your host, Martin Rieger. Today, we are thrilled to have Brian Price from Kion, a leader and player in the automated cloud operations solutions market. Let's go ahead and dive into how Kion is revolutionizing cloud security and compliance. Welcome, Brian.
Martin, thanks for having me. Really excited to be here. We have been around for quite a bit. We started in our journey by, really being a part of about 100-person systems integrator that was seeing kind of firsthand challenges organizations were facing as they not only migrated to the cloud, but tried to get significant workloads and engineer into different environments. And we saw these kind of common problems start to emerge over and over again. From giving, hundreds, if not thousands of developers access to an AWS account, AKA their own data center that now not only costs, a cost per instance, but per second that instance is running, and how do you control that? Being able to make sure that you can get cloud in the hands of those engineers as quickly as possible and last. But I know where we'll probably focus a lot of the conversation today. How do you make sure all those environments are set up, in a way that adheres to different compliance standards and controls and regulations, that they're constantly evolving, and sometimes, engineers aren't maybe as up to speed on what services or what regions really are allowed to be used for certain workloads. And really, we try to package that together into a solution that really offers people, mainly cloud operations teams, really the control they need to basically move confidently and securely in the cloud, to have really a cloud governed by default in their organization.
Man, that sounds like a fantastic evolution. And, when we talk about your solutions and how you help tackle compliance, as you kind of mentioned a moment ago, can you tell me a little bit about, some of the types of tools that you have in place, and what standards or compliance frameworks are you helping meet the requirements for?
Yeah, it's honestly a whole bunch. We have customers that, range across the U.S., public sector, federal government space, to private sector organizations, to, groups in healthcare and others. So, from the gambit of organizations that have to comply with things like FedRAMP to, CMMC, NIST 800-171, HIPAA, really even PCI, really we've built checks to help organizations, and really a framework that Kion offers, so that, there are things out of the box that we offer. I think we're up to about 8,000 compliance checks that are just kind of available today, that if organizations are trying to see, what's their baseline, how far off from just a baseline standard they can run those, they can map those, and Kion does the magic and applies those across different accounts. Really what we try to make sure, becomes kind of front and center is that status, but not just to the cloud operations teams, right? The challenge that I think a lot of organizations, especially at scale, face is that the people that can ultimately determine, how to make those changes really go back to the engineering teams, the project teams. So giving visibility at all those different levels of the organization to what that kind of current posture is, how far off that is, and also making it so that they can tailor those individual controls to how their organization, accepts risk, or in some cases can accept risk, is really important. And that's really kind of what, kind of Kion's core continuous compliance engine is really designed around making sure that we offer.
So that continuous approach, right, from a controls perspective, and with the standards that you mentioned, right, there's a constant evolution of changing frameworks. For example, the NIST 853 moving from Rev 4 to Rev 5 introduced a requirement for DISA STIGs, not just CIS benchmarks. So when those types of things occur, are you guys integrating that back in sort of in real time, or what can customers expect?
Yeah, we have a continual process that we're constantly kind of revving on new updates to the compliance standards, new best practices, even beyond that. Maybe it's CIS benchmarks, maybe you're not, you have workloads that, aren't necessarily aligned to a regulatory compliance, but just in general, you want to make sure security best practices are in place. We're constantly making sure that those are updated. On the other side of just the technical checks that you can apply in your environment, the other thing that our team also offers is a security controls matrix with some sample recommendations for organizations. So this is extremely helpful, we find, for groups that are, say they're just starting that process to prepare for that audit before a 3PAO needs to come in and really assess things. Here becomes a good starting point, right? It's, we always advise these are like compliance jump starts, right? These are to accelerate you. They're not, just the silver bullet that you need, but we hope they get you at least 70-80% of the way there, where you're only then having to kind of modify some specifics around how your organization's other technology investments or other policies really come into play to help make sure that, you have full kind of complete coverage. But that, is built off of a lot of the things that I know, Martin, you and I both, from our perspectives, were a part of like the Global Security and Compliance Accelerator program within AWS. And those teams have built some great baselines as well. And, in Microsoft, there's great teams that are doing that as well. We try to build always on top of that. That way, it's something that an organization can kind of take, quickly apply, assess, and hopefully save some significant time in their overall goals of just trying to meet new and evolving standards.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the AWS Global Security and Compliance Acceleration Program, because that along with other usual suspects like Google and Azure, for example, does sort of lend to different technology landscapes. So, integration is critical in that realm. How does Kion integrate with these existing technologies?
Yeah, we've done, a lot of different, integrations with other tools and other investments. I always say, at the end of the day, if we've designed Kion just to sit in this little box in a corner, we've really missed the mark, because there's a lot of other great technologies that are out there that we want to be able to take and, accept findings from and push findings to in some different cases. So I'll go through a couple of those. Now, we do a lot, obviously at kind of Kion's level, at kind of the cloud platform, the CSP platform, and AWS, Azure, Google Cloud. But obviously there's host level findings and vulnerabilities that need to be assessed and managed as well. So we've done integrations with, say, Tenable Security Center to be able to pull those back up and in to Kion. So you see a more complete view at both the host level and the cloud platform level of what that looks like. We've also integrated with things like AWS Security Hub, Azure Security Center to take and push findings as well into those platforms. Even in, if you're using a tool like Splunk or other kind of audit and log aggregation tools, at the end of the day, Kion is this meaningful, kind of management and governance layer across multi-cloud. And our goal is to make sure that still people and customers and organizations operate where they are and how they assess and how they manage, security and compliance in total. And so what we want to make sure is we are providing the right automation around that, but we're not getting in the way of forcing people to use a new interface or forcing people to use something different that they're unfamiliar with. We want to make sure that information kind of gets down into the right people and the right teams and the right projects. I think the last thing I'll just say, one other integration that we do a lot of is in what I would say IT workflow management tools. Within those tools, we, find that there are workflows for account provisioning to make sure that accounts can be set up correctly, to also make sure that workflows are set up for security control findings and issues that come up. So that way, if a team, as an example, has a new finding, they can then choose to ignore that finding. They can choose to ignore for maybe a certain period of time, right? They can also choose to accept that risk and then go from there. And so those are all really important things that, we found those integrations are just really key to help make kind of integrated.
Very nice. So it's a very proactive approach to addressing compliance issues as they stand today.
Absolutely. And again, we want to be as comprehensive really as possible throughout that. And at the end of the day, it's really designed around, for most organizations, giving them the right integrations that maximize the value of the tools that they're already using, they've already invested in.
Very nice. So I'll tell you, it's refreshing for me. As you know, I'm former auditor, still advisor, and operating in the same space, having tools like Kion out there to support this process and ultimately, in my opinion, accelerate compliance, right? Which is really what you're doing. I do have kind of a sort of a side question, maybe, which is to say, it comes across as sort of an approach to deploying and architecting new environments. But for folks who are already deployed, already operational, who all of a sudden maybe are awarded a contract that says, hey, I need you to get 171, or I need PCI, or I need FISMA, FedRAMP, or whatever the flavor is that you pick. What kind of experience would you say they could have in comparison to what I would say is manually going through and meeting those 8,000 plus compliance objectives and checks that you've got in place? Like what sort of time savings do they get out of that?
Yeah, I mean, so normally what we find is that, when that requirement comes in, right, they win a contract, they have to be able to say, okay, now I've got to, support an application or build something that really meets this. There is a lot, and I know, Martin, you've seen this. There's just a lot of just groundswell work that someone in the security part of the organization just has to get familiar with and comfortable with. Again, it's building that kind of body of evidence to be able to know exactly, how that is. And I think that the other complexity is, again, if they already have some things in the cloud, they don't and they shouldn't really treat everything now as this one size fits all approach. So just because you've added, a new FedRAMP, application or contract, that doesn't mean that as an organization, all of a sudden everything now needs to be FedRAMP moderate or FedRAMP high that you do in a lot of cases. And so, that's part of the goal of where, kind of Kion comes into play. We take this pretty robust way of helping you model your organization and relate cloud back to how your organization operates. Again, and sometimes it's across lines of businesses, sometimes it's across different directorates or departments, right? But you can see this picture of how cloud is really being used in a very meaningful way to how you make business decisions, right? So then, you say, okay, I've got this contract, and this contract is part of my defense division, and this defense division now, maybe because of that, we need to make sure now we're going to increase the overall kind of set of policies and procedures and ultimately then the rules that you want to have in place. And, by default, we can do, again, those checks that I mentioned before that just kind of give you that view of, are we meeting the mark, or are we off on something, right? But we also can go to the next level too, and so this is really where that time savings comes into play tremendously, where we have both proactive controls as well as kind of the remediation controls that are also kind of built into this. We have a whole library we kind of bundle together, we call Cloud Rules inside of Kion. And those are really, major time saving efforts for most organizations as they're coming up to speed, because again, we're not making you kind of figure this out from the ground up. There's a lot of work that our team has already done through the work of, dozens and dozens of organizations that we've supported, an organization kind of gets out of the box by kind of choosing to kind of go with some of our compliance capabilities within our platform. So, on average, I think we find that for an organization, when they're trying to take on a brand new compliance framework, they're spending in some cases, at least several months, if not over a year in some cases plus, to be able to meet that. A lot of that upfront work preparing for that first audit, preparing those controls and what needs to be done. We're taking 80% or more of that work and really reducing that to be something that, again, they're starting with a good baseline. They're starting with something that's proven it works other places, it's defendable. And that really short circuits so much time and energy and lets people focus really on the more important work, tailoring that to that project, that contract, or that workload, or that mission.
Nice. Well, Brian, it's been incredibly enlightening to learn about Kion's role in cloud governance. I want to thank you for sharing your insights today into our listeners. If you're navigating the complex world of cloud compliance, I encourage you to go visit Kion at https://kion.io. And they've got you covered. So thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next episode on stackCast.